it's taken a long time, but I think we're finally back now. Like house music definitely has taken a different turn, and I feel like it's blowing up again. So, and that's the great thing, especially after the pandemic. I mean, people have been cooped up for so long that we need an outlet. We need to go out and dance. We need to hear the music that we love. And even the classics. I mean, just hearing any dance music that has vocals, like, makes people happy. So when you just hear energy based stuff, it's a different emotion. When you can relate to what someone's singing about in a song, it brings out a different joy in you.
So today is Wednesday, October 6th, 2021. Who are we speaking with?
Kim Potrzuski, AKA Keep It Moving Productions, previously.
Tell us the backstory of Kim.
In the early 90s, you know, I was still in high school. In 92, when I started going to the Paradox, they opened in 91. The Paradox was a huge nightclub here in Baltimore City. They were having rave parties like every other Thursday, and it was called Fever. Charles Feelgood was one of the huge DJs there, which, you know, he's known basically all over. Scott Henry, and they were doing these parties that no one else was doing. They were warehouse parties. It was like a rave party, basically on a Thursday night at this amazing club that we have in the city. I went for many nights. The music was great, but it still never really captured my soul. I went on a Saturday night. One of my girlfriends was like, hey, you got to come check it out. They play house music. And I was like, well, what's house music? And she's like, just come, just come. So I went one Saturday night and I walked in the door. And now, mind you, from the rave scene, a lot of the music is non-vocal. So it's just a lot of beats, a lot of energy, but no vocals. I walked in and this music had vocals and it captured me. It was like I was in a different world, and I just felt like I'd never experienced this before. Also, living in Baltimore City, it was a very segregated music scene. And going to a lot of the clubs that I did, I was the only white person usually. So, but I loved the music, and I went that one Saturday, and after that, I stopped going to the Thursday parties because it was that profound to me that I could dance all night to music that had vocals. Like, vocals capture you, like you can relate. It was amazing. Every Saturday night I was there then, and that's how I started with the house music.
Wow. Talk to us about the Baltimore house music scene.
Well, when I got into it, of course, it was already established. We had Basement Boys, which I didn't really know a lot about, but I knew that they made the Crystal Waters record. She's Homeless, and I knew I loved that music. And when I was going to the Paradox on these Saturday nights, I knew that DJ Oji, he was on Morgan State Radio every Saturday from 8 to 12. And he would always promote the Paradox. He'd talk about the club, and the club stayed open until like 8 in the morning. So he would be on the radio from 8 to 12, and then he would come down to the Paradox. So listening to that, and then I would go to the club, and I finally met him one night and started talking, and he would see me there usually on Saturdays, and we became friends. I met Ultra at the time, Ultra Nate, and Teddy Douglas, and Charles Dockins. And they were starting a party called the Housing Authority Parties. So the goal of that party was to showcase local talent in our city, because believe it or not, our city is so full of house music and talent that a lot of people didn't know about. So my goal for that was, hey, I'll hand out some flyers and I'll get in the party free. You know, that's just what it was. So every Saturday, once a month, they would do the housing authority parties. I then met Sheila Ford. She became part of it. Lynette Smith, who was a singer as well. Mark Moultrie, who's a DJ, and the list goes on. I hadn't met DJ Spin at the time yet. So I was going to these parties, and I remember them talking about the Winter Music Conference. They were trying to have these parties to raise money so they could take a bus to go to the Winter Music Conference. And later, it was probably like 4 or 5 years later that I finally got to go to the conference for the first time. But just being part of that and seeing local people in our city actually being up on stage, performing, singing the music that we love was amazing. It was something to be part of. And from there, it just blossomed for me, because more parties would go on in DC and in Baltimore, because we're very close to DC. Anytime there was a house music party, I was trying to be part of it. I was like, hand me the flyers, I'll give them out, I'll put them on the cars. Like, I just wanted everybody to come together. I just felt like more people needed to know about it. More people needed to hear the music, so they would come. And so it wouldn't be so segregated. Going to DC was a little different. DC had a lot of different types of people. So the music, going to different clubs, you had so many different types of people, international people, people from Sudan, people from Morocco, people from France, all in one place listening to the same music, which I love that feeling. So I just felt like our city needed that. Oji and Alter were doing they started doing a weekly party called Oasis at a club called Orpheus. And every Friday I was there, I handed out flyers. So when Oji was playing in another club, like if he was doing something in the middle of the week, he'd let me know, he'd hand me some flyers and I'd give them out. And that's basically how it all started. It's just, I love the music so much that I just want everybody to be part of it. And I just did the footwork. I'd go put flyers on cars, I'd hand them out to people. And the thing was, every time I handed out a flyer, I'd tell people who was playing, what was going on. So I'd have a conversation with the people I was giving the flyers to, instead of just handing it and walking away. Because I felt like people will remember. If I tell you and I tell you what's going on, you're going to remember this conversation and you're going to come check out our party. And that's what started happening. And over time, I just didn't realize how many people that I became friends with and knew in the scene. And somebody put it into my head that I could have my own party. And I just didn't feel confident enough at that moment. But when I became friends with DJ Spin, that's how that happened. He was like, you know a lot of people. And I said, no, I don't. He's like, you need to have your own party. And I said, I can't have my own party. He said, what are you talking about? You give out flyers. All these people know you. You have a party and I'll be the DJ. He said, call up, right. He said, call up Wayne Davis, who is the owner of the Paradox. And he said, tell him you want to do a party and I'm going to DJ. And Wayne was on board. At the time, it was close to my birthday. It was in April of, I believe it was 99. And Spin had some friends that he was trying to do a party with, including DJ Charisma. And we all came together and we decided to do it as a group. They had a group called Pots and Pans, which I became part of. So we decided, okay, we're going to have a theme. We're going to make flyers. We're going to give out things. We're going to give out tapes, mixtapes at the time, before CDs came around. And that's how the first party started. I was part of a group. And it was amazing. Like, going to the Paradox, the place that I love to party at the most, was allowing me to be part of a group of people and have our own party. So that's how that part started.
Wow. What did it feel like to go full circle from attending the Paradox as a customer and now basically doing your own parties?
It felt surreal. It really did. Walking into the place and coming in before the club opens, like to decorate the club. I mean, we were hands-on. We did everything. We decorate the whole entire place. Like if we were going to give out party favors, we'd have that ready. We'd make drinks and have that at the bar. At the time, they had all these video screens in the lobby area near the soda bar, and we would play movies and things like that to attract people. But it was just like surreal. I couldn't believe that I was part of it at that time. I was like, you know, there are people that have been around longer than me that I just felt like we needed an outlet for exactly what we wanted. And we loved the place and we always wanted to party there anytime that it was available. So we had about 3 parties when I was part of that group. So, and down the line, we had a little conflict with some of the promoters and because they were in charge of giving us the dates. And then all of a sudden we stopped. And then it took off for me doing my own party by myself under my own name. So that was a little bit different. Spin had called me one night and left me a message on my answering machine. And he used to like rap and do crazy rhymes, leaving messages. And he was like, Kim, keep it moving. And I was like, oh my God, keep it moving. I'm going to use that if I do a party by myself. And then my last name is Potrzuski. So Productions, Keep It Moving Productions. That's where that came from. And at the time, I had met the Soul Providers. They were doing a local party not far from my house. And I had been going to the club and I met Jason and Ann. And they had, you know, put a bug in my ear that they basically wanted to start. They were going to start their own record label. They had a release on Basement Boys Records. Their first release was Tango. And their next release was Rise on Azuli. It was Beanie and Martini that did the remix. And the record blew up. And Jason was like, look, we're going to start our own record label. We want you to work for us. We see what you've done in the scene. We want you to come work for us. And I was like, really? Like, okay, let me know when and I'll be there. So when I contacted Wayne about doing the first party by myself, I had Jason from the Soul Providers, DJ, and I also had Charisma, and I had David Tabone from Yellow Orange, because I had became friends with them from doing some Basement Boy parties with Yellow Orange at the Paradox. So that's how I met that crew. But it all kind of came full circle. And, you know, I have my first flyer. I don't know if you can see it. It's probably backwards, but it was called Soul for Grooves. And Jason, Charisma, and David are on the flyer. So that's something that I will always cherish. And I love Wayne Davis, the owner of the Paradox, for ever giving me, just me, a chance to like do something so big. And the first party was a hit. It was huge. So many people came. I was like, I have to do this again. So down the line, a few months later, we had another party. And then we had Jason and Ian of the Soul Providers DJ, along with another DJ. His name is Neo Soul now, but it was Dre Love, and he opened up for us. So that's how I started my own parties under Keep It Moving Productions.
Wow. Wow. Explain to people the highs and lows of being a party promoter.
Well, you know, for so long, loving the music, when you have a desire and a passion, you want everybody to be happy. You want everybody to be on board with everything that you're doing. But down the road, I wanted to get paid for doing what I was doing. It was a lot of work, and I worked a full-time and part-time job in ophthalmology. I've always worked in the eye field. And then I had a part-time job selling glasses. And I also was going out like 3 or 4 nights a week. And I don't even know how I did it back then, but the footwork, driving to DC, driving through Baltimore, putting out the flyers, and just making sure people knew, because this was in the beginning of when the internet started, like in like 97. I remember getting my first email at work. Like the doctor had an AOL address, and he let me create a username and an email. And I, then started like sending out emails. But before that, it wasn't really heard of. I mean, the message boards had just started. But doing the footwork and talking to people and interacting, I think, is really what drew people in. It wasn't like, here's a flyer and then I walk away. I never did that. I just felt like talking to people would bring them, and it did. But the highs of that, I loved it and I loved the outcome. But the lows were when I wanted to be paid, because people had it for free for so long from me, they didn't want to pay me. And there started to become some conflicts with a few people. But I still love the music, and I wasn't trying to let that derail me. With the sole providers behind me and wanting me to work for them, Jason really gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of knowledge about how the industry worked. I mean, at the time, I didn't know how a record was made. I didn't know how it was produced in the studio. I went to the studio with them. I, got to see how everything worked and how it all happened, which gave me a better understanding. But then I can market myself better. Like if people wanted my services, I could then hopefully get paid for it. So before Elan Records, which was Soul Provider's record label, before that started, I started promoting for a club in DC called Andalu, which Fabio and Patricia, they own the club. And they also own the restaurant next to it called Sesto Senso. They were awesome people. Taha was the DJ of the club, and Taha used to do a night, and they wanted me to promote their party. So they literally paid me $100 a week at the time, which was a lot to me. It was like, $100 a week. I just wanted like $100 a month. I just thought gas money, that's all I needed. But no, they paid me because they knew I was worth it, and they knew the job that I was doing. So I did that for a while, and I brought some other DJs in, like David Tabone. I brought Jason and Ian in to Andalu. Taha had them play on his nights, and then we started a weekly residency on Tuesday nights once their label launched, and we started doing a weekly residency there in their club.
Wow.
Yeah.
Explain to people, how close are DC and Baltimore? Are they relatively close, or is it
About 45 minutes away?
Oh, that's not bad. So that's not too bad.
No, right now I work in DC, so I commute on a train every day back and forth.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Besides Paradox, were there other key clubs in Baltimore that people need to know about?
I mean, there were a few that came and went. The Paradox was always the one that survived. I mean, it was open for 25 years. And I grew up there, basically. I was, a teenager. I wasn't even 18 going to the club. And you were supposed to be 18 to get in at the time, but I wasn't. And, I knew the guy at the door, and he was the manager of the club. And later down the line, I started promoting their parties for their anniversary every year because of doing my own parties there. There was a club called Orpheus. That's where Oji and Ultra did their weekly party called Oasis. That club I went to also as a teenager. They used to do a teen night on Sundays. It was kind of like a rave thing. But my friend Donnie Berlin is a DJ there, and Donnie and I have been friends since I was like about 16, and he lives in New York now. He plays house music. But we kind of grew up together in the scene. He's older than me, but he kept me under his wing at that time. And then that club stayed open for so long. They had so many different parties and different nights, but it closed years ago. It was probably the only one that really stayed around versus all the other clubs that came and went, or bars in Baltimore. But Paradox was always the staple.
Tell us about the current state of the Baltimore house music scene. Where do you go out dancing today?
Well, with the pandemic, it's been different. I haven't really been out a lot in Baltimore, I have to say. I go to New York and to New Jersey a lot because of my boyfriend living there, Tony Humphreys. I go when he DJs in Manhattan at LeBain, or when he's playing a party. Here in Baltimore, it's a little harder for me because I go back and forth seeing him a lot. So, but the parties here now, it's a lot different. There are some spaces that they used for like big events, big concerts that Ultra has had her Deep Sugar parties at. Although she kept that party going for so long at the Paradox, and then the Paradox closed. So she continued it in a couple other places. And then the last place that she was doing the party was this place called Soundstage, which is literally like 3 blocks from my house now. And it's like a big place that they have concerts and stuff at. So she's got an anniversary party coming up, and that's something to look forward to. But it's different now. It's definitely more integrated. I wouldn't say majority of the people are Black. It's definitely changed a lot, and which I'm so happy, because so many other people have experienced everything that I love about this music to keep it going. We just don't really have an outlet as far as, we don't have a radio station anymore. 88.9 they have, and they do the audio infusion, but it's not like it was back in the day when Pope and Oji did the underground experience, because that was 4 hours strictly underground house. People tuned in, you recorded on a cassette tape, and then after that you go to the Paradox. So, but it's a lot different now.
I mean, compare and contrast the New York versus the Baltimore scene, house scene.
New York is different in its own way. Again, it's a lot of different types of people there. The first time I went to the Shelter, I was like, oh my God, I can't, I went and danced and people embraced me. It was like, they didn't know me. They'd never seen me. I was dancing, and all of a sudden other people started dancing with me. It felt really good. Like, it was a good energy. People were there to dance, and that's what it was about. Baltimore's the same way. It's just a little bit, our city's different. It's different than New York. It's not 24/7. It's, so of course we have a lot of crime here, but the thing is, we don't have as many clubs and as many places to have parties as New York. So it was always something going on in New York versus in Baltimore, where you might have to drive to DC to go to a party. So, but I love both places. It's like, it doesn't matter to me. It's just the energy of the party. And even the DJs, like when the DJs from Baltimore come to New York, it's a different energy. Like, they play differently, and I can appreciate it. I love it that they can go and show off how our city really is. Like, and I think it brought a lot of people to the Paradox too. Like, a lot of the people from Shelter and from all the other parties there started coming to the Paradox when Ultra started doing her Deep Sugar party, which I thought was amazing. I'm like, I've been coming to New York for years and I hadn't seen those people here. And then all of a sudden they started coming here, which I thought was the best thing ever to party
Mm.
with those people.
Mm. How does house music make you feel?
You know, when you listen to a house record, I feel energized. I feel elated. Like it's like no other music. Most of the music, it's very uplifting. So just hearing a song and the words hitting you the right way and getting goosebumps when you're on the dance floor, it's no other feeling. Like I that's the only way I can describe it. It's just, you could play rap, you can play hip hop, you can play club, Baltimore club music, but nothing's like house music. The vocals, the beats, the energy, it's amazing. I mean, it's been my passion since, you know, the early 90s. Once I found it, I never let it go.
Is there a Baltimore sound?
There Now, when you want to talk about Baltimore club music versus Baltimore house music, Baltimore club music is more beats, it's faster, it's a lot of energy. Um, if you know who Miss Tony was, they used to do parties Friday nights at the Paradox, and that party was different. It was Baltimore club music. The DJs that would play were on the radio too. So they would bring the radio crowd. But the music was definitely high energy, but it was a lot of beats and it was fast. But it had vocals too. So it's when you hear it, you know. Like if I hear a Baltimore club record, I'm like, oh, that's a Baltimore club record. Like I hear it like in the first 5 seconds, I can tell. House music here, I think Baltimore definitely has more of a gospel sound, especially because Spin and the record labels that he's had, the music that he's made, along with Basement Boys and Teddy Douglas, Jay Steinauer, Tommy Davis, they all have like created their own style of music, along with Ultra being, you know, a singer and a DJ now. They just created something that we couldn't find anywhere else. Like the energy and being more like you're going to church, but you're not in church. So I feel like that's more of the Baltimore sound.
What is the Winter Music Conference?
The Winter Music Conference for me was, you know, every year in Miami, in March. There was a big conference that people from all over the world came to celebrate dance music, all kinds of dance music, whether it be house music, EDM, tribal, however you want to categorize any kind of dance music, people were there. There were parties 24 hours a day for a whole entire week. Usually during spring break in South Beach. They have a ton of clubs there. The energy there was completely different. Meeting people from overseas and seeing that they love the same music that we love, it just brought so many people together every year, but it also showcased a lot of people, a lot of talent, new releases. A lot of releases would come out usually in February, beginning of March, in you know, preparation for the conference. You get to see artists perform the songs that you love, the new songs that came out. And also you get to see DJs that you heard about or listened to that never got to see live. And you'd have the opportunity at the conference. It was just amazing. Also the networking, like meeting new people, new promoters, getting contacts so you could make those contacts later and book, you know, the DJs that I was working for. And then have our own parties at the Winter Music Conference. And that was really the goal, to have our own parties. And, you know, I started doing that with Soul Providers.
So talk to me about the Soul Providers. how long did you work for them? And what was it like to work for them when they were at their peak? I mean, Rise was a monster anthem.
So when Rise came out, I mean, things started blowing up for them. They didn't even have, at the time, I believe one of the guys in Holland, they reached out and wanted them to come and DJ. Somebody had passed away, and that was like his dying wish, wanted them to DJ and have Shellers perform Rise. They didn't have passports at the time. So, right, because it was like people just started really traveling outside, like, you know, the US as far as for house music. Like, our DJs here weren't doing that as much. It had just started, like, you know, 98, 99, as far as I can remember. I know it happened before that, but for the people around me, it just like Spin going to Japan for the first time, Charisma going to Chicago, like just being outside of our city, let alone being outside of the country. So at that point, they got their passports, and then things started taking off. They wanted to start their own record label. It was Elan Records. And they were working on some other records. And their first release on Elan Records was called Movin' On. And it, in parentheses, it says KIM, because in the song, she's saying, you got to keep it moving, you got to keep it moving. And that was kind of a tribute to me and getting people to know who I was to get them bookings. So it was a brilliant idea. The first conference having, you know, promos to actual records, vinyl in my, like I had a record bag and I had promos to give out even to the local DJs. And that was something new for me. Like, I thought, wow, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe it. I loved being part of it. So then the next goal was for me to get bookings for them, you know. So my first international booking was at Bed in Sheffield, in England for them. And I remember, you know, getting this large amount of money and thinking, is this real? Like, I can't believe this is actually happening. So, you know, I got a percentage of the money. Each gig they played, I got a percentage of. So even if I didn't book it, they gave me a percentage because they knew that I was valuable to their team, and they knew that anything they needed, I was there for. It was wonderful being part of the Soul Providers and Elan Records. I mean, without them, I just feel like I worked for them. It was probably 99 to maybe 2003. And then Ian and his wife had moved to Amsterdam, and Jason and his girlfriend had moved to Jersey for a while. And so they kind of like separated for a while, and, you know, we did a little bit of things here and there, and then that ended. But as far as being part of just the Soul Providers, and I felt privileged to be with people that actually appreciated me and wanted my skills and wanted to help me succeed. It wasn't that they were all about themselves, because they weren't. Jason was really a special guy. He really was.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, and I'll tell you, the next two releases that they had on their label, I had met the crew from Yellow Orange when we did a party at the Paradox, when Chance performed Rescue Me. That's when Rescue Me came out on Yellow Orange. And I had met Tony before that once. And then the whole crew came, and I met Todd Dimery, David Tabone. And for that party, Todd Dimery and I, we talked a lot. We danced all night, and we became friends. And he wanted to come hang out. And I said, you can come stay in my apartment. And I told Jason that Todd was coming, and Todd wanted to go check out the studio where they were. And Jason was like, sure, bring him over. Well, Todd's cousin, Carolyn Victorian, he's like, I got a cousin that lives in Baltimore. And I was like, really? She lives here? He was like, yeah. He's like, she's a singer. So we actually left the studio and drove to her house with Jason. And the next thing you know, Jason's making records with her. So the first record that he made with her was called Set Me Free. And, or actually, no, it was Try My Love. And then he made another record called Set Me Free. But that's how that happened. It was just like, it's such a small world, and knowing one person from a label, and then he has a cousin here, and then next thing you know, the records blew up. And I just think about that time period was very special, because everybody was trying to move forward in the house music industry. I mean, it was different because technology was changing. We had the internet now. We didn't really have Facebook yet. We had Deep House Page, we had the message boards. But basically, just getting someone onto a label and creating a record that fast and putting it out was amazing. It was so fast, and it just seemed like everything took off from that point. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And then after the sole providers, what did you do next?
Well, after that, I was very sad that they left. And I still wanted to do parties, but it wasn't really something. After working for them and having that experience, and I just wasn't able to do the parties by myself anymore. Plus there were a lot of other people coming around wanting to do parties, and I still promoted for people, and I still did it for free because I love the music. But that's basically, I still went to the parties and I handed out flyers, and that's basically it. I didn't really work for anyone else. I mean, I feel like without them, I really didn't want to do it. And I hate to say it, but they were so influential in my life. And Jason just being and you've met Jason, so he is so special and gave me the confidence that I needed. Not saying I didn't have it without him, but he educated me about how things worked and how the industry worked, and why not to get upset about certain things. And it's just business and you have to move on. So I continued all my friendships with all the DJs and people here and artists. And anytime someone was performing, or, I would be the first one trying to promote it for them. And that's basically all I did.
Over time, I feel as though underground house music, I feel like the 90s, 2000s was like the peak of deep house, local house, underground house music. And then house music went a different direction. And then EDM took over. Explain what EDM is and how it's different from house music, and then how that affected our scene.
Well, now when you have more technology, of course, you have different elements to create music. So anybody could create beats on a computer. You didn't need people with instruments. Although a lot of house music, we still use some instruments, and some stuff was, created through the computer, and it sounded amazing. EDM really didn't have vocals. It's fast paced, it's energy based. And for a lot of people, when I was in the rave scene, it was a little different. It was very drug induced, I have to say. Back then, you couldn't really stay up all night for the length of those parties unless you were doing drugs. And also the energy of the music, you needed to be on drugs. No one could dance that long at that pace without being on something. So I think as time went on, younger people gravitated toward the EDM. That was the new fad for people. house music still, it was harder to get people to want to hear vocals. And I feel like the people from my time period, actually, a lot of the people here are probably 10 years older than me. So I was like the youngest one hanging around at the time. But I feel like as time went on, we needed newer artists and a newer generation to bring in the energy of the house music and to keep it going. Like if you still have the same people from that time period DJing, it's not going to bring the same crowd. You got to get the younger people knowing about the music to bring them in. So it's basically having the outlet to educate the younger generation, but it definitely divided our scene. So, and I just think it's taken a long time, but I think we're finally back now. Like house music definitely has taken a different turn, and I feel like it's blowing up again. So, and that's the great thing, especially after the pandemic. I mean, people have been cooped up for so long that we need an outlet. We need to go out and dance. We need to hear the music that we love. And even the classics. I mean, just hearing any dance music that has vocals, like, makes people happy. So when you just hear energy-based stuff, it's a different emotion. When you can relate to what someone's singing about in a song, it brings out a different joy in you.
Looking back at your career as a promoter and also working for sole providers and doing your own parties, would you do anything differently, knowing what you know now?
Well, probably not. I developed the friendships that I did, and I'm glad that I was able to experience the things that I did. Had I not experienced the downfalls and feeling like people didn't appreciate me, I don't think I would have been as good at doing it as I was, because I had to overcome those things. And being around people that were encouraging me and trying to educate me on how to work in this industry, if I didn't have that, I mean, that made me grow. So basically, learning from your past experiences, I definitely wouldn't change anything at all.
What advice would you give to the next generation?
You have to love the music. If you don't love the music, it won't work. Coming into the scene, if it's something that you want to do and you want to make a career of, you have to really give it your all. You can't work another job. I mean, I've always worked another job and a part-time job. If you love this music and you want to be a DJ, a promoter, management, booking agent, you have to do it full time. You got to give it all your energy. Otherwise, it's not going to work for you. So.
That's perfect. Those are the questions that I had. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to talk about in terms of house music and the scene?
Now, one thing I did forget to mention was our, there was a host on 88.9, The Underground Experience with Pope and Oji. Her name was KP, my initials. And she went to Coppin she went to Morgan State. And basically, she worked with them at the radio station. And she wanted to start doing a show, like a TV show, a dance show. And it was probably about 10 of us at first that got recruited. We went to Coppin State University because they had a multimedia department, and she had the idea she'd be the host, and OG would play the music and we would dance, and then they'd have like an artist perform. So our first time, it was, I have it on VHS tape recorded. It was on public access in Baltimore. Okay. So it was very funny because the first show was very corny, I think, and I'm going to say that. But the second show that we did it in a different location, and we did it actually in like a bar club place. But it was 9:00 Saturday mornings. We had to go, and to dance and to put your energy like you've been at the club all night was really hard at first. we did a few tapings, and then I was like, look, we actually need to be in a club. So I talked to Wayne and I talked to the manager at the Paradox, and I hooked it up for us to do the tapings at the Paradox in the back room, which was perfect. So each time we did, we'd spend 4 or 5 hours recording the show, dancing, doing certain things, having different talent and artists. And then it would air on public access. So, people could see what house music was in our city living here. I can tell you, I went to the store a few times around the corner from my house, and this is when we had Blockbuster. I went to Blockbuster one day and I hear some guys whispering, and they're like, that's her, that's her. And I was like, and they were like, don't you dance on that cable show? And I was like, oh my God. So it was extremely gratifying to know people recognize me, but also it was like, wow, people are actually watching the show, which was amazing. So that brought people more listening to 88.9, the underground experience. And then they wanted to know where to come to hear that music. So it was really something amazing. And I'm so happy that I have these recordings on tape, because you can't find them anywhere. They're not on YouTube. You cannot find them. So KP passed away. Rest in peace. She was amazing. We loved her. Without her, we wouldn't have had that show. So I just want to, give props to her for creating such a magnificent thing for our city that we loved.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a perfect way to end it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a fantastic interview. It's good to connect after so many years.
Yes, definitely. I'm so happy to see you.
I don't make it to Baltimore ever, but if I ever do, I'll let you know.
Or if you come to Jersey or New York,
I'll give you a heads up.
I'm usually there like every other weekend.
Yeah, I'll give you a heads up for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe you can interview the other guy.
Actually, I'd love to.
Yeah.
I love to.
I'll let him know. He doesn't love interviews, but he would do it.
Yeah, I know he's not a fan. That's why I haven't asked him. But like, that guy has,
Oh my God.
so many people. Like, he just changed a generation.
The fact that he's still so humble is amazing. He keeps me grounded. Like, he is, Jason, knowing Jason, and then, knowing Tony, like, they were both about elevating people. It was never about like, you want to step on top of people. Like, they wanted to create something, but if I'm moving up, you should move up too. I'm going to help you. You shouldn't like step on people. And that was something I think our city had a hard time understanding for so long. It took a really long time for people to come together here. And once they did, it was kind of like, finally. But Tony is just a different, to this day, this man is still very humble. He gives people the props they need. He's created hits by playing records. Look, I know a lot of people have been around longer than me that went to Zanzibar, but just hearing the stories from all these people that he made, like, that he put them on basically by playing a record.
Yeah, the thing was, you gave Tony the record and he made you a star.
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I know you interviewed Abby, and just when she did this Movin Records party and they celebrated Tony too, it was amazing to meet a lot of those people that I had not known, but I had heard about. And so many stories people told me about, if it wasn't for him, CeCe Rogers, like, everyone, like, just, they love him so much. And I just feel like sometimes he doesn't get the props he deserves. Like, people talk and they say that, but out in the limelight, it's like, you need to give him the credit he deserves. But
1,000%. Like, he is on the Mount Rushmore of house music, hands down.
Absolutely.
Period. I never forget. I went to what's that party in the UK? It's not in London, but it's a little bit out in the suburbs. I forgot the name of it. Southport Weekender.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and he was playing there, and he played a good set. And one of the promoters was like, "Look, everyone leaves on Sunday. Don't leave on Sunday." I was like, "What?" She's like, "I can't tell you, but don't leave on Sunday." I was like, "Okay."
Uh-huh.
So I stayed until Monday, and on Sunday night they basically announced a last minute, unannounced Zanzibar set. Tony
Oh
Humphries
wow.
opened to close.
That's amazing.
That's all I can say.
Right?
Amazing. It was, he had that place rocking from like, I think it was like 8 to 2. It was
I mean, I can
unbelievable.
imagine, you know.
It was unbelievable. People were losing their mind. People, I mean, I wish, I don't, he probably does. I wish he recorded that set,
Mm-hmm.
because like that was just magic. Because I never got to experience Zanzibar, but I heard
Me
so much
either.
about it. Yeah.
I
But
heard
like,
many stories, but I was a little bit too young for Zanzibar.
oh, same here.
Right.
And so, but I knew the records, but I just never experienced it in the club. But to experience it at Southport, and it was perfect too, because Southport is like, it feels like a few thousand people. So on the last day, it was probably like 500, like the right size, the right crowd,
Mm-hmm.
the right. It was heaven.
The
It was,
right people there for that
yes,
energy and
yes.
that set.
It was
I
one of
mean,
the most
he can play a
unforgettable.
record now, and I'm like, oh, that's a Zanzibar record. Even though I've never been there, I just know his Zanzibar records.
Yeah,
You
he's
know.
he's next level.
Yes, definitely. Well, I will definitely talk to him because I think you need to interview him.
No, I appreciate it. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, I really appreciate you even thinking about me, like to
No,
talk to me. I
absolutely.
mean, this is the first time anyone's really done this. So, I mean, that's why my wheels were turning today. Like, wow, I got to think about the timeline of things and how things have progressed. But I mean, I really appreciate it because I feel like, other people need to see it. And maybe
Absolutely.
it's something that they want to do down the line that they never thought they could be a part of.
I
So,
totally agree. Also, too, with this pandemic, I'm learning that, you know what? Give people their flowers when they're alive.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
losing Ian and then losing Jason almost a month later.
I know, that was crazy.
Was something I was not prepared for. Yeah. I don't want to start crying. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all good.
Yeah. But I love them and I will miss them.
Same.
But thank you. I really appreciate this. I really do. Let me know when you're ready to air it.
Absolutely. I will do.
Hopefully I don't look crazy.
No, you look fine. Thank you so much again. Great to reconnect, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, take care.
Right. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.